Sticky.
And welcome everyone to, I can't believe it, day 7 of the Revitalize Your Midlife Symposium for 2025. If you're new, just joining us, this event is designed to inspire, empower, and enlighten us all as we navigate this journey called midlife and beyond. June is that month. It's my birthday month. And I don't know about y'all, but I celebrate all month. But I also wanted to give something back. So most of you know, or maybe you don't know, I'm a lifelong learner. So I wanted to bring about these people who are such, I don't want to use the word expert, but they've been living this life as far as these specialties are concerned. And so we're celebrating my birthday, and this symposium is a testament to my personal belief that everyone deserves to feel comfortable in their own body and my ongoing commitment to lifelong learning. Now, we know that midlife's a period ripe with reflection, growth, and most importantly, opportunity. It's a phase where we can leverage our past experiences, welcome change, and confidently stride into our best selves. So my aim with this symposium is to equip you with the necessary tools, insights, and motivation to successfully traverse. Who uses that word? Successfully navigate. No one says traverse. This thrilling chapter of your life. So I hope you leave this event with one valuable piece of information. I'm hoping you leave with more, but if you leave with one, I feel like it was a success. So I'm delighted to announce this event is sponsored by Small Space Pilates, a platform that enables you to reap the benefits of fitness in the comfort of your own home and prompting improved flexibility, strength, and mental well-being. So if you are unable to join us in real time, don't worry, every moment of this will be available for replay. So also, if you're watching real time, you can ask questions. If we don't get to your question, I'll make sure that Dr. Mandy gets those, and we will be able to answer those questions for you. And speaking of Dr. Mandy, she is our day 7 guest. She is the wonderkin as far as microbiome and the gut is concerned. I consider her that. I know there's other people out there. So I'm thrilled to announce Dr. Mandy Patterson. She's the visionary behind MandyPatterson.com, which is a thriving online wellness consulting platform. Mandy's mission is to guide high-achieving women and couples on their journey to optimal health. Optimal, underline, health. She has a diverse expertise as a naturopathic doctor, certified holistic health coach, functional medicine practitioner, and fertility specialist. Oh, Lord, Dr. Mandy, welcome, welcome, welcome. That's a lot.
Hi, Kat. Thank you so much for having me back. I know I came on last year and really enjoyed our conversation.
You did. That's why I asked you back, because everyone's starting to ask questions. And so, Dr. Mandy, the first question I want to ask you is, how did microbiome become such a part of what you do? And I know as a doctor, you can pick your specialties and stuff like that, but why did that kind of resonate with you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And honestly, it really does start back from the time I became a healthcare professional. So I'll talk a little bit about my personal history, just to bring truth to what I'm doing today. But so when I was a young age of 23, I ended up having my first son 3 months premature. And he was born, weighed 1 pound and 14 ounces. And yeah, he was so tiny. He was like the size of a beanie baby.
Yeah.
And I actually was basically told when I went into the hospital, you need to get your things in order. You're probably not going to survive this, because I had developed pregnancy induced hypertension, or preeclampsia, and had gone into HELLP syndrome, which is kidney and liver failure. So it was God's hand on my life and my son's that we made it through. And long story short, because of his prematurity complications, ended up having 2 bowel surgeries, and that resulted in having an ileostomy. So for the ladies here that are not sure what that is, it's basically when you've got to, they have to take out the parts of the gut that have dysfunction or disease. He actually had tiny strictures all throughout his small intestine, and then they had to bring it out for a period to let the bowel heal up. And so,
oh my goodness.
yeah, so that's really like my baptism into gut microbiome, because he struggled for years. And honestly, we haven't even discussed this because this just happened this past year, but he had to go back in for 2 more bowel surgeries, including a revision, because they did those surgeries when he was so small, and he grew, and, all of those things. And so they had to go in and clean up all the scar tissue from that. So back whenever he was little, we were being passed from specialist to specialist, being given lots of medications and drugs. And I was not okay with that. I was like, I want a better way. And I knew it was not the right path that we were on. So went back to school, got my naturopathic doctorate, and then trained and did 2 board certifications in functional medicine. And honestly, I feel like the gut is the epicenter of all things with health. And if we go back to Hippocrates, he said, all disease really begins in the gut. And there's so much truth with that. Because
Mandy, say that again. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No.
Say that again and slow it down so people can
Yeah.
really hear that.
So he basically said all disease begins in the gut.
Ooh, that's powerful.
Yeah. So if we contemplate that, what that means for us, even as we age from, the time that we're in our childbearing years into perimenopause and menopause, we can start to understand the complexity of all of it and the impact it has on our everyday health. So
ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
I became very interested in the microbiome for some reason. Don't ask me why, but I was looking it up and I started reading, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is huge. So Dr. Mandy, can you just tell us, and this is my question, I'm just gonna say, is your microbiome and your gut one and the same?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, your microbiome is this ecosystem of trillions of microbes, and it's mostly bacteria that live in and on your body, and especially in your gut. And so what many of us don't understand or don't know is that when we are in utero and we are born, the mechanism for our birth, the way that we arrive here, sets us up for success or issues down the road. So, if our mother had a vaginal birth, we get that infusion of those healthy gut microbiome microbes and bacteria as we're coming through the birth canal. So if you were a C-section birth, you already kind of have a mark against you because, of it's a different like strains of bacteria that we're exposed to if we don't go through that birth canal. And, that's kind of a hard thing for us to wrap our heads around, but it does speak to maybe some of the challenges that ladies are experiencing today. And the empowering part here is there's so much we can do to change that terrain and make it more robust and, helpful in optimizing health.
So let me see if I heard you correctly. So when you go through the birth canal, that's always a good thing because you're being birthed. But what happens when a woman has a cesarean? Do you get the same thing or no?
You don't. So that's the thing. And if you look at research, like they talk about how it's different strains of bacteria that we're exposed to. So like a baby that goes to the vaginal birth canal literally gets there's a lot more microbes in there that are beneficial for gut health. Whereas if we're taken from our mothers by C-section, we actually adopt the bacteria that are on her skin versus like what would be, from a gut flora side of things with the infusion through the birth canal. Right. So that's like one of them. And like another one is if we're breastfed versus if we're bottle fed. We know how beneficial breast milk is. And that, it's very fatty. And from an immunology side of things, like it's, very robust in supporting the immune system and protecting that baby, because that baby comes into the world and, needs those helpful microbes to support their health. Yes. So that's even like another one that, we really don't have control of when we're born into this world. Are we C-section versus vaginal? And then are we fed by breast milk or formula? So,
Wow.
Yeah.
So I read that your microbiome is you have all these little, I don't want to say bacteria because it's not bacteria. What do you call them, Dr. Mandy, that helps to break down the food and make sure that what does it do? What is your microbiome supposed to do?
Yeah.
Let me just ask you. You're right in front of me. Let me just ask you.
Yeah, and you're right. It is bacteria, but it's microbes, right? And so we have this entire like planet inside of ourselves from a gut perspective, and they outnumber us. Like, so I talk to women about this all the time. Like when we've got cravings, that's not just in your head. Like the species within your body is communicating to you. And so that's where we can get hooked on sugar, and like, because sugar feeds those bad guys that are hanging around, right? Yes. So, I like to think of the microbiome because I like to think of it in analogies. I'm more of a picture person, but I like to think of it as a garden, right? So when the soil, which is your gut environment, is healthy and diverse, everything else, your hormones, your digestion, your immune system, and even your mood tends to flourish, but when that garden can become overgrown for whatever reasons, and it's a lot of things, usually could be a long history of antibiotics. It could be chemical exposures from a job that we, are in. We also know with night shift workers, they have different microbiomes than day shift workers.
Interesting.
And this is why like women have more of a risk, and this is men as well, for cardiovascular events if they're night shift workers. So, and that goes back to our gut microbiome and that dynamic interplay. And so whenever it's lacking, we got these extra weeds or overgrowth. It might be dysbiosis where we've got these imbalances in the healthy good guys. The other guys can kind of grow out of control. And so those symptoms can start to crop up that we might see. It might be fatigue, might be bloating, could be anxiety, irregular cycles. It could be just difficulty transitioning into perimenopause and menopause. So we got to make sure our soil is healthy.
Yes. So can you talk a little bit about, I keep hearing that the microbiome is your second brain.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when we talk about the microbiome, so, here's the thing. It's like, it contains like 85% of our immune system, right? So, if our gut is off, we're going to have more illnesses and frequent colds. And it could be like we are starting to have autoimmune symptoms. We know with women, it's 80% of autoimmunity, like women have those challenges. They have them more than men for whatever reason. And there's a lot of speculation on that, if it from a thyroid side of things and many other things. But, that is one thing that we know, that the immune system lies within the gut. So you need to have healthy microbes to support your immune system. Another really interesting thing is, like, many of us don't know this, but, our mood is intimately tied into our gut. So if we struggle with depression and anxiety, well, over 80% of our neurotransmitters are generated in our gut, including serotonin, which is our happy hormone, and keeps us grounded and keeps us, vibrant in all of those things. So, if you are struggling with hormones, it might not be necessarily a hormone issue, but it could be a gut issue.
Wow. Dr. Mandy, what types of things can happen when your microbiome is off? And I'm talking about, things that you have to look at. So if I keep having stomach aches, of course it could be something else, but what kind of things do you see in your practice when you're helping that make you think this could be a microbiome problem?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you introduced me, and like, I am a fertility specialist. And I'm also trained in bioidentical hormones as well. And so a lot of times when ladies come to see me, they're like, help me with my hormones. What can I do here? But honestly, like, we have to go upstream and see what else is going on with the adrenal and the hormones. What can I do here? But honestly, like, we have to go upstream and see what else is going on with the adrenal and the thyroid system, which, from a thyroid side of things, that is our generator of our energy from a mitochondrial standpoint. So we really need to make sure our thyroid is functioning well. And then from an adrenal side of things, stress can really take a toll on ladies as we age. It can really impact us when we're younger, but we start to lose our foothold on stress resilience, because as we journey into perimenopause and menopause, it's actually more of an inflammatory situation from a hormone side of things, where our hormones are declining. So, but this goes back to what the fuel that we have in our tank and what's going on with our microbiome, because it does impact that the thyroid adrenal system. They're talking to each other. And then also our liver and detoxification and our detox systems, including lymphatics and kidneys and skin and those things. So,
wow.
Yeah.
It sounds like to me like your microbiome is like a major highway. You know what I mean? To your health. And speaking of health, if you have a healthy microbiome, can things like exercise, does that increase your microbiome? What you eat or don't eat can increase or decrease I don't know what to call them. The little guys that help your, what do you call it, your plants, your field, your garden.
Soil. Yes, yes, absolutely. And like, what we do know is, like, when we dive into that, even like, one thing that I recommend for a lot of women is HIIT training. So high intensity interval training really does help lower those inflammatory markers that we see, and the gut is part of that. So, exercise is medicine, movement is medicine.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for saying that. I'm always saying, keep it moving. Just move. So I'm so happy you said that. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting.
No, you're okay. And like, before I was a naturopathic doctor, I was an occupational therapist. So very, strong background in anatomy and kinesiology and all of those things. And so, like, I did not mention this, but I worked in the hospital assisted living outpatient ICUs for 22, 23 years. And that is the one thing that I see time and time again. The common denominator of failing health is when we are not moving, when we're sitting, So
that's huge. I mean, I keep reiterating this, that movement affects everything in our body. And when you don't move, it affects everything in your body. And so I just think it was just so cool when you said that. I was like, yes, he's talking my language.
And here's like a real, like, practical thing for women to, like, chew on. Like, that if you think about it, many women are walking around with hypothyroidism or sluggish thyroid. Well, we know that impacts the gut. And a lot of times what we'll see is constipation. So if we're backed up and not pooping at least 2 to 3 times a day, those toxins are building up and that impacts our mood. And so, when we think about that, it's so powerful. And, another piece too is if we're not moving our body, we're not moving the toxins. And so lymphatic system is similar to our cardiovascular system, but our cardiovascular system has a pump, our heart, right? It's constantly pumping. Whereas lymphatics, we have to move the lymph. And
absolutely,
to take out that trash or piece of things as well. So, and that's really intimately tied in with our immune system. So if we think of our immune system being on our gut, making all these connections here.
Wow. It sounds like the microbiome is it's a huge, not indicator, but it's like you need your microbiome to be working efficiently in order for you to be feeling good. And let's talk about diet. That's where I'm kind of going.
Yeah.
How does what you eat impact your gut?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And so when we think about the microbiome as the soil, we need to be putting in good phytonutrients, antioxidants. We need adequate fiber, which we're sorely missing out on, especially in the United States. We're just not eating the level of what we need to eat at. And then another thing is too, that's really changed with history is even if you look back into the 1950s, they look at the nutrient density of food, and that has significantly gone down because of the pesticides, the herbicides, the chemicals, the glyphosate that they're actually putting on our food. So we have a higher nutrient need to support our body to operate and run efficiently and also take out the toxins, right? So, I really advocate for more of a plant-based diet because we need those healthy plants to fuel that microbiome. Now, I also believe too, from a protein side of things, as women, as we age, we have higher requirements for protein.
Yes.
And we are not getting enough protein. So if we look at the plate, I love to see the plate being half plants, and then a quarter of it being, your healthy protein. And I I do eat meat. I think it's important the source that you get it from. So I always talk about knowing your farmer and getting grass-fed, low, clean sources for that. And then, aside of that also is you need some healthy fat. So pretty simple, but it's something that we struggle with as a society.
I think we go in the opposite direction. We have a whole lot of carbs, like dense carbs, not the good ones, a little bit of protein and no fiber at all. I've been really trying. I'm a carnivore, you guys. I'm really trying hard to back off of the meat a little bit. I don't know if I'll ever be meat free. I'm just gonna put it out there. But I've been really trying, and even my husband, who does the cooking in our house, has really, he'll say, we're having a plant-based meal today. And I'm like, oh, cool. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But what I found is if I have a meat, a salad, and a starch, let's say, I will eat my meat, I'll eat my salad, and I end up only eating a little bit of whatever the starch is, if at all.
Yeah.
And so I found that really works well for me.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel the same as you do. So I've always eaten meat, and I really do think it's all about balance, because here's an interesting thing. Like if I look at a stool test on somebody, I a lot of times can see if they're eating too much meat. That can actually show up because it does change and impact that microbiome. So I think the biggest challenge is getting the good quality source. That's the biggest thing, because if we dive into dietary history, it is rich with different types of diets that can serve people at different times, right?
Yes.
Like keto is one of those. And it's well, okay, there's different types of keto. What does that look like? You know, like if you're just eating
Exactly.
fatty pork and like not having a lot of, then it's probably not the best type of keto.
Mhm.
But I will speak from experience. I feel best when I'm eating a lot more plants and I have
Mhm.
lean protein along with it. Like this morning I had some fermented sourdough toast. I
Mhm.
had some guacamole on it. I added some
Mhm.
arugula for those bitter greens because that helps with
Mhm.
digestion and help really stimulate gastric secretions that helps break down food further. Add a little tomato on it, and I
Mhm.
had some grass-fed chicken, and that was my breakfast. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's simpler than we think. I think
Yeah.
when people come, they're overwhelmed because, like,
Mhm.
I think a helpful thing to start people out on is an elimination diet to kind of just do a gentle detox. But
Right.
that can feel overwhelming, cutting out a lot of different food groups for a period of time. So,
Yeah.
you know,
I think people, when you talk about plant-based, people are like, oh, they kind of do this,
yeah,
nope, nope, nope. But I think that if, and just like anything else, and I've said this in when I talk about movement or exercising, pick one day,
yeah,
one meal, maybe it might be lunch, and just, substitute start there.
yeah,
And so I started with a plant-based shake,
yeah,
and it's, don't worry, it's it's got tofu, it's got
yeah.
a what do you call it's a yogurt, but it's cashew and something else
Okay.
yogurt, and I mix that all together, and it is the best tasting um, shake I've had in a long time. But that's become a constant. So now I'm looking for something else. What else can I add?
Yeah.
For another day. So it's always better to start small, start slow,
Yeah.
get used to that, and then, move forward.
Well, and like here's a simple like example too for ladies is that last night I had like a power bowl and my power bowl
Mhm.
had like black rice in it. I
Mhm.
had some roasted Brussels sprouts, some roasted pepper, some radish in there as well. And I had like a curry chicken with it, like
Mhm.
seasoned. And it was great and it was
Mhm.
filling. And, I had that around 5 o'clock. And
Mhm.
I was full still at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So the thing
Mhm.
is if we're eating more dense like that
Yeah.
and not overcomplicating it, I think it's just roasting some vegetables, having those up. Like
Mhm.
you said, maybe it's just one simple change. How can we
Mhm.
start to add more fiber in? And
Right.
maybe we just focus on that for a couple weeks,
Yeah.
and not overwhelm ourselves.
And until it becomes like just a part of your week. You're like, oh, lunch, I'm having this.
Yeah,
It's Monday, I'm having lunch. This is what I'm having. Get used to that where it becomes, you don't even have to think about it anymore. I
right.
think one of my favorite breakfasts is that cashew yogurt. Um, and actually it's cashew coconut. And don't get fooled. I'm not a coconut person,
Yeah.
but you don't taste any coconut in this, I'm gonna tell you. And blueberries.
Yeah. That
And
sounds delicious.
I put a layer of blueberries, yogurt, another layer of blueberries, and done. And that's my favorite breakfast.
Yeah.
And it tastes really good. So, Dr. Mandy, I'm going to ask you a spicy question here.
Yep.
I've heard of a lot of people that say, I don't like vegetables and I don't like fruit. So, what do you say to people like that?
Yeah, and I tell people like when we start to eat those types of foods and our palate changes. And
Mhm.
actually we can program our brain like that's what we end up craving when we start adding that in. And so you made a really good point. It might look like starting with a protein shake that you can sneak some veggies in, maybe it's some spinach, add in
Mhm.
some berries. I love
Mhm.
berries. They're full of
Yes.
phytonutrients and antioxidants.
Mhm.
Add in a little flaxseed or chia or even
Mhm.
psyllium husk to like really help with the fiber side of things. and just start with that.
Okay.
And, pick the things that you like and start to just be a little adventurous. And one thing we really haven't talked about, or you kind of alluded to with the yogurt, is the importance of fermented vegetables. Like, those are prebiotics that are going to be feeding those gut bacteria. And so just a little tiny bit of kimchi, or, coconut yogurt's another great one, some sort of yogurt, or, one thing that my kids love that I've done for years is they're called dilly carrots, and they're fermented carrots with dill. So they have a little spice and like salty, and my kids just get them out. I ferment them for a while, but they're like little sticks, and my kids will eat those. And so I think it's just reframing the way we approach things and looking really at food as medicine for our bodies.
Yes.
And it's a journey. Like, I'm still learning. I've been on this journey for a long time. You too. So yeah. And I tell all the ladies that I work with, let's just meet ourselves where we're at, give ourselves grace and peace, and just do what we can do.
I love that answer. So let's say I've been having some gut issues and I go to my general practitioner doctor.
Yeah.
Is what is this person going to say to me? Are they going to say, "Oh, let's do some tests"? When someone's having these kinds of problems, where do they go?
Yeah, I know. It's so challenging. And then a lot of people end up at a digestive specialist, and they want to give them all these like autoimmune suppressing medications that cost thousands of dollars. And so, here's the thing, like, they're going to probably recommend you to take some Metamucil. That's kind of their go-to. I know, right? That's one of them that I hear a lot. And then a lot of times, like, they'll even recommend stool relaxants and like other things. And the challenge with that is you're kind of putting a Band-Aid on the issue. So we need to get to the root of what is going on. And so, that's where you really need to reach out to more of a holistic practitioner that can do a really thorough health history and, look at lab work, have conversations with you, and partner with you on your health journey. But a lot of times this goes back to simple foundational things that we can do. That includes hydration and getting half our body weight in water a day, moving our body, getting in. I think the sweet spot, according to research as of now, is 8,000 steps per day is what is kind of the benchmark for where we can see just major changes in health and optimizing. So, that's like another one. And so it could be, Kat, a little bit more complicated, where there might be like an overgrowth of H. pylori. That is an endemic microbe in our body that we have. But what happens is when we have a suppressed gut and immune system, it can proliferate and grow out of control. And so another challenge with that is it can be passed between partners and family members. So sometimes if there is abdominal issues like pain and bloating and gas and all of that, that might need to be looked at, because that can actually be treated. The family can be treated, and it can help, everyone get their digestion back on track. And another thing to say too here is some people don't even know they have an overgrowth that's causing issues.
Absolutely. So thank you, Dr. Mandy, for that. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with our halftime reset. And we are back. Thank you for waiting. If you just tuned in, we are talking to Dr. Mandy Patterson. She is my go-to. If I had any microbiome or gut health issues, she's the person I would go to. But if you're just tuning in, this is the 2025 Revitalize Your Midlife Symposium. And this is a chance for me to learn because I'm a lifelong learner, but also to put some information out there so that you walk away with at least one piece of information that could help you become healthier and help you feel better in your body. So, Dr. Mandy, welcome back.
Thank
And I want to ask, what are some common misconceptions about gut health that you've heard or you know about that, you can tell us yay or nay on?
Yeah, the standard response with many physicians is your nutrition doesn't really matter. Or, if you go to the doctor year after year after year and you're told you're fine, and then you walk in and then you're told you have type 2 diabetes, and then you're told to go on a strict diet, to go see a nutritionist or a dietitian and kind of send on your way and given a prescription, usually it's metformin, is the go-to to treat diabetes, then that's kind of the path that many have set up. And it's unfortunate, right? So, and many of us don't know that blood sugar regulation is so intimately tied in with our microbiome and our hormones.
Yes.
So for my ladies out there that have struggled with PCOS, endometriosis, fibroids, cyst, all those kinds of things, that is directly connected back to blood sugar regulation, and that impacts downstream our microbiome and our hormones. So that's one of the big ones I see.
Yeah. I have to tell you that what you're saying is true because growing up, I was a dessert after dinner girl. My mother had dessert 6 days out of the week. She didn't cook on Saturdays. And we had dessert all the time. So as an adult, I was craving sugar, especially during that time of the month. It was sugar, 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 and then salty, 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 and sugar, sugar, salty, salty. And just recently, since I have started my path into plant-based, is that I found out because I have fibroids.
Yeah.
And so they said, fibroids, they don't give me any trouble, but they can make you look a little poofy in the stomach.
Yeah.
Okay. But what I found is that when I eat the way I'm supposed to, not the way I'm supposed to, but when I eat plant-based, that they shrink a little bit and my stomach is flatter.
Yeah.
Who knew that? So what Dr. Mandy said, that's me. And now they're not going to get rid of the fibroids, but maybe they can shrink them enough where it's not a problem.
I've actually seen it completely almost reverse fibroids and cysts and those things.
Wow.
Yes.
That's huge.
Now we can't make promises but we do know that there is a correlation between driving down. And a lot of this goes back to inflammation in the body, and then we think of the imbalances that may be going on with the gut. It's all interconnected. And I always tell my ladies, hormones are the downstream impact of everything upstream. So we've got to go see what's going on upstream.
Yes.
So
here's a question I have. So we always have some women, I guess there's some out there who are, they're dieting, they don't diet. They diet, they don't diet. What is the effect on your microbiome of going on and off these diets? Does it hurt the microbiome? How does it affect it?
It absolutely can. And there's been quite a few studies even out there, which is really interesting. I'm trying to think of the one. It was with, it was in 2021. There was a study in Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience that actually showed that gut dysbiosis was significantly correlated with cognitive symptoms and mood disorders in perimenopausal women. So, there's so much out there that really speaks to that, and the importance of diversity in the diet. And so depending on what kind of diet it is, we can be doing more harm than good. And I see this all the time with women that have done yo-yo dieting for years. Some of them might even have eating disorders. And that's very near and dear to my heart, because my mom actually had an eating disorder back in the day, and so did my sister-in-law and some of my best friends.
Wow.
So, it's a challenge for ladies, and not in knowing what they should and shouldn't do. But I will speak to this. I really feel like there are significant benefits with time restricted eating. And I think that is really important to implement. And it actually really can speak to the length that we can go to our metabolic resistance. And when I say that, because that can seem a little complex, but basically, how is our body handling fasting? That's a true test of our resiliency. So if we're able to go longer with our meals, that shows that we probably have more optimal systems in place that are able to support that. And so I do feel like there's this sweet spot with fasting, but you can go much longer with fasting for certain conditions, be that cancer, that can be very valuable. But I like to encourage women to start with a 12 to 13 fasting window. And that really helps give the gut time to rest and for all the other organ systems to function optimally. So we don't think about this, but digestion is a really, it requires a lot of energy from our body. Yes. Lots of energy. So, many of us are eating late into the evening. We're busy with kids. I have had that challenge over the years, 6 kids. We are on the go all the time. But if we're eating later into the evening hours, that is directly disrupting our sleep algorithms and those things that happen while we're sleeping. So much happens then. So absolutely. Starting out with that fasting window, so we finish eating by 5 or 6 o'clock at night and then don't eat till the next day, till that can be really valuable.
Yeah,
so
I love that. So when you were talking about time restricted eating, you were talking about fasting, to clarify. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. There's different types of fasting, right? So I tend to go more towards the time restricted, because the challenge is when women are in childbearing years, if they're doing really extensive fasting every day, it can disrupt the hormones. And so for our ladies that are wanting to get pregnant, I feel like that 12 to 13 hour window is a great sweet spot for most ladies, and that really just encourages them, because I think fasting, if you were to tell somebody to go do a water fast for 3 days or 5 days, they would look at you like you have 3 heads, right? Because that just seems way overwhelming. Way overwhelming.
Yeah, for sure.
And we like our food in the U.S.
Yes, we do.
So
here's a question for you. So for women in midlife, they're perimenopausal, menopausal, does time restricted eating or fasting help with that creep of, the weight that comes on because of who knows what?
Yeah, that is a great question. And what I'm learning, even with myself, because I'm 45 and I have seen my mom struggle over the years with so much. She had hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's. She's had gut issues. She was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And part of the journey that I've been on was I want better for myself than what my mom and my grandma had access to. And, so for me, that is one thing that I'm really shifting. I'm even doing 2 meals a day. So I will eat around 9 to 10 a.m. And then I will eat another really solid meal between 3 to 5 p.m. And that's all I do. And there's actually quite a bit of research even out there that talks about, we think in the US, we need to have 3 meals a day. Not in actuality. If you look at it, and we see that women are faring better, and especially our ladies that have struggled with that excess weight. And then we kind of get that tire ring around our belly when we're kind of in perimenopause. I feel you. I feel it. But, a great way that we can do that is to really kind of shorten that window or lengthen that window. Not eating as frequently can have really great impact for ladies.
I love that answer. Thank you, Dr. Mandy. how can we collectively, all of us, including myself, how can we naturally improve our gut health and microbiome?
Yeah, I think number one, Kat, and I'm sure you probably agree with this. I feel like as ladies, we take on so much. There's so much stress that like we're always processing. Like, when we're middle age, we're not only taking care of children still and like young adults, but then I have like a 93-year-old grandfather who is my only grandparent that's still living. So we're taking on so much. We're working. And so, what I have really found with myself is making time throughout my day. I always prioritize my exercise. I know I'm going to the gym or I'm going out for a walk at 8 o'clock in the morning when I have my kids dropped off at school. That is my time. And I think, even something else that's been really beneficial to me from a spirituality side of things. I am in the Word as a Christian. I'm reading my Bible. That is filling my cup spiritually. And I think that's another really big component is faith or, whatever that looks like for ladies.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I think one of the things that I do is I have one day a week. It's a Sunday, and it's called Catitude Day.
Oh, I love that.
And I get to do whatever I want to do if and when I decide I want to do it. Now, I've even trained my husband. It's on our family calendar. He'll say, "Hey, can you do that?" And I go, "It's Catitude Day." I might get to it. I might not get to it.
Love
And
it.
so he has learned that, oh, okay, if you want to, it kind of goes that way. But I feel like it's my day that
Yeah.
I can do whatever I want. I find my stress level comes down. I can work out, I can not work out, I can watch TV and lay on the couch all day. It just depends on what I want to do.
Yeah.
But what I find is that it really just, my brain just powers down.
Yeah.
I feel better when I have those days instead of go, 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 do, do, do. And all of a sudden we're like, oh, I don't feel good. But
Right.
then you've been on the go for so long, you don't understand what it was you may have done or not done
Yes.
because it becomes a blur.
Yeah.
You blink it's Monday, you blink it's Friday, and you're like, what did you do on Wednesday? You're like, who knows what I did on
Right.
Wednesday?
Well, I was even yesterday, perfect example. I work from home and I also have an office, but it's summertime and everybody's home. I've got 3 home from college, one literally leaving next week for grad school. And I have all these boys in my house and they're like, what are we eating? And like, they're always hungry. And like,
They're always hungry.
and I was like, I need a hot minute. So I told my husband, I was like, I'm leaving for a little bit. I just need to like, just decompress a little bit, do a little bit for myself, like you said, and just breathe. And
Yes.
I felt so much better after I listened to music in my car and did a few things for myself. And really, I think that's where the big shift for us comes is as we kind of get into that middle age era, it's almost like I've learned with myself, it's either a hell yes or a hell no. And if it's a hell no, it's a hell
Right.
no, right? So,
Exactly. And here's the thing. I have Catitude Day, but you don't have to take a whole day.
no.
But say, can I take 5 minutes and just do some alternate nostril breathing or
Yes.
just inhale and exhale. Find a quiet spot. Like you said, Dr. Mandy, go in your car and just breathe. You would be shocked at how fast that helps you to bring everything down.
Yeah.
So we're not saying go out and get this or buy this and do this. We're saying take the toys that are in your box now and utilize those. We forget about how effective breathing is
Yeah.
when we take the time to really, because we do this shallow in and out breathing, when in reality we want to do this deep, whether it's alternate nostril breathing or just taking the time to inhale for 5 and exhale for 5. And we think it's so simple that it's not going to work. Trust me, it does work. It
Yes.
really does.
Yeah.
So,
You're
Dr.
so right.
Mandy, I understand that, going in the supermarket, when I go into, like Walgreens or someplace, there's all these probiotics and prebiotics.
Yeah.
So, first of all, can you explain what both of them are? And then, are they okay to take? Is it something that you recommend, or is there a better way to get our prebiotics and probiotics?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, right? I think it's just so overwhelming. I feel like most, prebiotics we can get from our food, right? So it's more fibers, more healthy, colorful foods in our diet. Leafy greens is one of them that's huge. Like I was saying, I had arugula this morning. That is a bitter herb, and it is great for supporting the gut. So I think that's a great place to start with prebiotics, some sauerkrauts or dilly carrots, like I was saying, yogurts. And then as far as the probiotics, there are many different strains, of course. And, I would like to say that not all supplements are created equal. So, partnering with a trusted source that knows what they're talking about, that's an expert in supplements, is really valuable, because there's different situations in which you might use different strains of probiotics. And so that's where, like, advanced functional testing can look at like a comprehensive stool test, and I can see what's going on with the good guys in the microbiome and the not so good guys. And then you can strategically use those probiotics to help. But, a great probiotic, especially for ladies that like might have been on antibiotics of recent, that might have issues with like diarrhea, like Saccharomyces boulardii is like stellar. It is an amazing probiotic that can really help restore the gut. And I offer all these resources in my practice, in my membership, and have a dispensary myself where I recommend the top products that I firmly believe I know what they're doing as far as with the research side of things, and how they process their supplements and all of those things. So
and you're a doctor. She's a doctor, so she knows what she's talking about.
Well, I've lived and I've learned, Kat. Like I said, I don't know everything. I'm always learning,
always
like
learning.
guys.
Absolutely.
But I do really believe that probiotics can really help reestablish health. But there is a time and place for when you want to use them, and like starting out with just probiotics might be too much for your system, and you could experience negative side effects. And so that might not be the first place to start in your gut healing journey. I would say the simplest way to start is just getting in more high quality, nutritious foods that are going to support the microbiome.
So I'm going to ask maybe a simplified question, but when do you take a prebiotic versus a probiotic?
Well, like prebiotics could literally be part of our routine every day. We need prebiotics in there, and how we get that is through foods, right? The fermented foods we were just discussing.
Yes.
And even if you have gut issues and you've tried it and you've had negative side effects, start with just a tiny bit. Like it might be a tablespoon of some coconut yogurt, or, it might be just a little bit of, I make my own cabbage, like, ferments like that. So it's so easy to do. And you can just do a little bit, start with a little bit and slowly build up over time. And then the probiotics, of course, like I said, I feel like in unique situations, they can be used. I'm one of those type of people, like I'm a voice of reason. I don't think you should be taking 30 supplements a day or even 10 supplements a day. That drives me crazy.
Yeah, it does me too.
And so, it's like, well, let's kind of look at this and see what you've got going on. And like we were talking about earlier, in different hormonal conditions, that's when different probiotics can be valuable, such as with PCOS. Like we know, that can be really helpful, like a targeted probiotic that works on blood sugar regulation. So
you said the acronym PCOS. Can you just tell our audience exactly what that means?
Yeah, sure. So it's polycystic ovarian syndrome. We're seeing more and more women have it. On average, about 10% of the population does have that. And there's different criteria that defines PCOS, but that can be like missing periods or anovulation. There might be some history of cysts on the ovaries. Now, that's not the only defining quality there. And then depending upon what expert you talk to, there's different types of PCOS that can be caused by inflammation, birth control. If ladies have been on birth control and are coming off, like they can have a PCOS situation from that. a lot of times, the underpinnings of PCOS is metabolic dysfunction and, an increase in male or the testosterone and like some of our more male hormones. And so ladies can have like, thinning hair, they might have acne, facial hair that they're dealing with. And so, so that usually, if you think you might have that, then there's a lot that can be done to help you restore your health, not only from the hormonal side of things, but with the gut side of things.
Yeah. One last question, Dr. Mandy. We had talked about stress.
Yes.
Now, you can't not have stress. We're living in a stressful environment in a lot of different ways. If your microbiome is healthy and you're under stress, does it help you to tackle the stress versus being stressed and having an unhealthy microbiome? Did I say that right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I really feel like we should aim more for stress resilience because there is a lot of things in our life that we can't necessarily change or our particular circumstances. So I really do believe it's being more tuned in and mindful of how our body feels when we're under certain stress and pressures. Now, there's certain things that maybe we just need to remove from our life. Maybe it's a stressful job, and that, it can take such a toll on our health. Or maybe it's like an unhealthy relationship, like a spousal situation or friendship or, something like that. And so I do think that sometimes calls us to make hard decisions. But I think if we go back to our intuition and who we are, we all matter. And, we really need to look at what our cup needs. And we might need to take certain things out of our life to get there. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Dr. Mandy, this has been such an enlightening conversation. And I've got like 10 questions in the back of my head. And I look at our time, I'm like, oh, we're not going to get to those. So where can people find you? Do you have like a PDF that people can download for our listeners? Or if someone needs your help, how do they get a hold of you?
Yes, thanks, Kat. So ladies can find me on my website, which is mandypatterson.com. It's Mandy and then Patterson with double T. I'm also out on social media. I speak at a lot of summits and do a lot of podcasts. I run my own podcast called the Gutsy Fertility Podcast. Now, it's not just all fertility, ladies, but I want to make the correlation that our fertility, our past fertility is predictive of how we're going to ease into perimenopause and menopause. So we really dive into the foundations and the history of naturopathic medicine. And we've got some great guests that we bring on. I'm on Instagram as Dr. Dr. and then Mandy Patterson. I'm also out on social media as Mandy Patterson Functional Medicine Practitioner. And we also run a group on Facebook for ladies. It's a private group, Kat. I can share that with you in the freebie that we will get you for the listeners.
Absolutely. Dr. Mandy, thank you so much for coming back. I'm such a fan of yours and just the information that you bring. I'm always like, oh, that's a cool idea. Oh, I'm trying to look at the camera and write stuff down at the same time. So I'll have to look at the when this replays. But thank you so much for being here. And for our listeners and people watching, I hope you got something out of this. Understanding how our microbiome is so important to our entire body, just like our brain. Our brain is essential. Our heart is essential. Your microbiome is essential. And if we keep all of those healthy, there's a good chance that we're going to look better, feel better, etc. So this was day 7 of the symposium. It did not let me down at all. And it seems almost fitting that Dr. Mandy was the last person, because you're going to be like, this is the person I listened to on day 7. We will be back next year for number 3. I think it's important to really keep talking about this because we hear it and we go, oh, and then life takes over and we forget about it again. Start to put some of these things you've heard from some of these speakers into into working for you. Now, maybe your bones are healthy and you don't need a bone expert, but maybe your microbiome, you've been having some stomach issues and you're thinking, I wonder if something like this could help me. I wonder if Dr. Mandy can help me. And the answer is yes, she can. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating and your questions. And even though you may see this on replay, if you have questions, I will make sure Dr. Mandy has them. So until next time, until next year, we are wrapping up the 2025 Revitalize Your Midlife Symposium. I'm loving doing this. Thank you, Dr. Mandy, for being here. And thank you, everybody. Until next year, keep it moving.